Democracy, and protecting democracy became a big issue in this election.
It has become almost policy for one of the political parties to adopt at least a certain degree of election denialism.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win.
The best news about this election is that there's going to be future elections because we didn't elect a bunch of election deniers.
These groups have just continued to perpetuate mis and disinformation on conspiracy theories around elections, and they're not going to stop.
I'm Molly Blackall, I's Global Affairs Correspondent, here in Washington, D.C., to learn more about what the midterms mean for the future of US politics, including that all-important 2024 presidential election.
Hundreds of nominees went into this election denying the authenticity of the 2020 vote. And during my time in the US, I've heard many voters saying they still think it was rigged. But many of the key Trump-aligned election deniers who were running lost their races, and there was no second Capitol insurrection. So what do the results tell us about the state of American democracy? I'm speaking to two leading experts who've been monitoring disinformation and voter polls during the midterms.
We've seen, coming out of 2020, election denialism be a massive trend and a massive thread throughout the 2022 election.
35% of voters in these exit polls say they do not believe that Joe Biden legitimately won the presidency. That is a third of American voters. That is a high number. And when you look at, if you isolate that just among Republicans, because it's among Republicans, it is, not a vast majority, but is a majority of Republicans.
I think one of the things that is important to remember about, especially some of these kind of conspiratorial communities on the right, is that when they lose, they don't moderate. Right, we saw the Republican Party lose in 2008 and 2012, right? And instead of kind of shifting a bit more moderate, they chose Donald Trump. We saw Donald Trump lose in 2020, right? And instead of having kind of a moment of reflection, there was January 6th.
So looking forward, what are we going to see in the next election?
This is a long game here. Right, there's not a period on the end of the sentence. There is a comma. We'll see who ends up on top in the Senate and who ends up top in the House. But I think the real test of that is going to be, what we see as we pivot to the 2024 elections. What we see these actors really focused on. Right? Are we going to continue to see the kind of the main vectors of conspiracy theories, the traditional conspiracy theory influencers that we see online? Are we going to see them double down on these narratives? Are we going to see the former president double down on these narratives? Or are we going to see them shift to something else? I think
when people vote, they're also kind of thinking about the country that they want to live in. There is something about kind of like the existential trajectory of the country, and I think that is something mood-wise that has changed here over the past, not even just 2 or 4 years, but back to 16. What kind of country are we? And, I think that, look, every election is a choice. And the more that, either party can define what that choice is for people, that is how you win elections. If you can define the choice, if you can pick the question voters are asking themselves as they're marking their ballot, that's how you win elections.
I think it's important to remember that these actors are playing the long game here, right? The election denialists, the conspiracy theorists, the people who are trying in their minds to right the wrong from 2020. This is only halftime of this game. And they are looking squarely at 2024 for kind of the end game of what they're working towards. So, yes, there was not a repeat of January 6th. There wasn't, kind of these mass mobilizations by groups. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be vigilant and we shouldn't stop paying attention.